Two. Well, hello and welcome to the Bicycle Coalition of Maine Wednesday webinar series, sponsored by Tandem Roasters here in Portland. We are doing a presentation today on making your own gear with myself, Travis. I'm the office manager at the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, and Alejandro Strong of of Packraft Maine. So good morning, Alejandro.
Morning. Thanks for having me be a part of this, and thanks everybody for coming. I'm excited, and also like I only agreed to this when it was with Travis, so that we would have a real expert here. But excited to talk about just the fun of make your own gear, especially with biking. It's such a cool place to experiment and try and come up with new things.
Awesome. Well, we're stoked that you're here with us today. So we're going to each go through some slides and kind of talk about our background and our history and some projects we've been working on and some ideas and resources for folks that are interested in starting that journey of making your own gear. I am sharing my screen, so I'm going to go and then Alejandro will go. And we have somebody here monitoring questions. So if you have questions as the presentation is going on, feel free to just throw that in the chat, and Anne will let me know what's happening and we can, answer those questions, or there'll be time at the end to answer any questions that you all may have. So, and also the last thing, just that this will be recorded. It's being recorded right now, and it will be on our website in a couple days. So here we go. Okay, so I grew up in a family that sewed things. My mother and my sister, they sewed clothes. So I kind of had that exposure, but I was not interested in it literally at all. And there was one summer that my mom was like, I'm going to make you a bunch of shorts for summer. And so I got to go to the fabric store and pick out the materials with her, like the colors. And I think because of that, I was like, oh, like if you want something in a certain way, you can just pick it out and you can make it yourself. And it's also cheaper and more fun. So, fast forward another, couple decades, and I started making my own gear. So it all started with here. I'm going to do my first slide. There it is. I did it. Okay. So I am now living in San Francisco. I'm at some fabric store because I'm also a quilter. And I find in this discount bin this wicked retro fanny pack pattern from Green Pepper Patterns. And I thought, well, this is real fun. I've never made anything like this before, but I just love this aesthetic. I was an 80s and 90s kid. So everything just like, this was awesome. I really loved this and I wanted to make it. I was a big bike commuter at the time and I thought it would be great. I had a reflector strip on it. So I thought it would be really great for biking around. One of the things I really loved about Green Pepper Patterns is that they made it super easy to know exactly what I needed because I had no idea. I've never, if you look at the pack cloths here, like I've never heard of any of these things. So I, found their website and I called them up and literally just went right down this list here and they sent me exactly, like I didn't know what number 5 coil zipper pulls were. I didn't know any of that. And it was really fun to be able to be like, what colors do you want? And I got to pick out all these great colors. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to start with this project was because I had no idea about anything to do with so besides quilting, like I knew how to use a machine, but I didn't know about different needle sizes. I didn't know about special thread. And I made this bag. In fact, I have it right here. I made this bag. It's really destroyed now. It's been like 20 something years. I think I made this in 2006, so almost 20 years. And I used it for many, many, many years. And it wasn't an industrial made bag. In fact, so this next slide is showing over the years, this ended up being one of my number one backpacking tools. Later in life, I ended up becoming a professional backpacking guide, and I always use a fanny pack, and I still do today. This pack is now retired, and I have another fanny pack I use, but it's really fun to hang on to. But as you can see, like by the time 2018 came around, the reflective strip had since gone off. And I made this little loop here in order to put a bike light on. So it was just like fun little things like that. Like that wasn't part of the original pattern. So after that, I got really excited about making my own stuff. So I went back to Green Pepper Patterns. They had a website, and I was like, "Ooh, what other fun things can I create?" So I needed some gaiters, and I didn't have a ton of money. So I was like, "Great, I'm going to make my own gaiters." And I found this really bright orange. You can't really tell in the picture. It looks a little muted there, but it's like this hunter orange brightness and I made these gaiters. And again, it was really great to be able to use this company because I could call them and they could send me all the little pieces to it. This pair I used for about 10 years until they were in my car in Portland, Oregon, and my car got stolen. So I lost those. So it took a couple years before I made some new ones, which are right here. Anyways, I made these ones in blue. And for instance, there's these little clips, like the little clip for gaiters when you put it on your laces. Like where I wouldn't know where to get that, and can't find that at Joann's. So using a company like that was really great. And of course, now there's actually tons of companies that you can get these specialty little things on. Let's see. So after that, okay. Oh, here's a picture of the new gaiter. That was really fun to make. So I don't make a ton of clothes, but every once in a while I do. And again, green pepper, I really love these patterns. They have not been updated in decades, so they're just really fun aesthetics. This is my partner modeling a sleeveless hoodie that I modeled after the polar pullover vest here. I also am wearing a vest that I made for myself. This one is a zipper. And again, I just found this piece of material somewhere and I was like, wow, that looks super fun and cozy. What can I do with it? And I turned it into a vest. So later on in life, I was then living in Portland, Oregon, and my friend Tennyson made here in Maine made a frame pack, and was posting about it and talking about it. I was like, oh, that's super cool. I feel like maybe I can make one of those. So I actually went to some bike shops to just look at what like professionally made frame packs looked like, and kind of just eyed it and was like, you know what, I think I can do this. So I didn't actually have a pattern. I just kind of brought the ideas home and kind of came up with this one that I have here. And I would do a lot of things differently now, but there, there are a lot of fun features to that. And actually, I have it right here. And this is that, again, you probably can't tell how bright that is, but it is super, super bright. But what's fun about this is I actually made it in two compartments, and I've got two different zippers here. I probably wouldn't have all that Velcro on next time, but that was a really fun project to do. And the same with this stem bag. Again, I just started seeing, like, once I started getting into this and started looking around, I could tell that all these folks were making frame packs and stem bags. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And it was pretty like easy once you kind of like get into the flow of bag making. So fast forward another few years, and I'm now living back in Maine, and I'm just really enjoying making bags. And so I was like, I didn't have a job at the time. I was like, I'm gonna make bags. And so I came up with the name T-Bag, which was actually a nickname of mine after I used to be called T-Bone. Anyways, long story, but T-Bag. And so again, all these bags are just made on just regular sewing machines. And so I started making a ton of fanny packs and these toiletry kits and like little zipper bags down there. I love working with zippers. And every time I make something, even still, like I made a bag last week and sent it out, and I just like opening and closing it because it's so fascinating to me that you can make zipper bags. It's like this like most amazing thing to me. But so anyways, as it turns out, it was actually really, really hard to just become a bag maker by myself in my living room. So I got a real job again. Thanks, BCM. So one of the things that I like to do is buy things in bulk. And of course, I was making a ton of stuff for different people, but even just for my own use, I on eBay in particular, I've gotten a few of these, like 200 meters worth of coil zipper. And so there's two different types of zippers, or maybe there's more, but there's two that I'm familiar with, the sort of plastic teeth one, and then the coil zipper one. And the coil zipper, you cut to whatever length that you need, and you can also put on your own zipper pulls, and you can put different colors, where the plastic tooth one is kind of like a fixed thing. This on this jacket, is a zipper or a plastic tooth. You can't probably see it, but anyways, it is great to buy these things in bulk. For instance, this 200 meters, you'll have it the rest of your life probably, and you get some funky, weird colors as well, especially if you don't, I mean, I really like bright colors, so maybe you can only get these big bulk items in weird colors. I don't know, but anyways, that's a big suggestion. And then let's see. So yeah, so a few resources I just wanted to talk about. The green pepper patterns, they're still in business. In fact, when I moved to Oregon, they're in Eugene, I was like, can I just please come and like look at your warehouse? They wouldn't let me. It's totally fine. They don't have an open warehouse, but you can still order stuff online, and you can find their patterns in a lot of other places. Like you'll find that other places will sell their patterns. Ripstop by the Roll is a great resource. They have a great online presence. They're doing tons of little videos. They even have some free patterns on their website, and they have a podcast. So if you really want to geek out about this, like a whole podcast just about zippers, and maybe multiple, it's just really, really fun. I really like what they're doing. They're based in North Carolina. I can't actually find out if you're in North Carolina, if you can just walk in or not, but maybe you can. I don't know. Sailrite. So Sailrite makes these industrial, sort of portable industrial machines. Later in life, I ended up getting one. Ironically, I actually don't use it as much as I do just my regular sewing machine, but I just wanted to highlight it here because it's another great place to buy zipper pulls. Like I buy 100 at a time. And also just great colors. It's like, if you're really into color, there's just so many good colors. But here in Maine, especially, I wish that I could walk into these stores. So some of the places I do walk into, if you are in Maine, which I'm guessing most of you are, you're probably familiar with Martin's. Most Martin's have great fabric sections. In fact, I just got an email last week from Martin's that was saying, hey, a bunch of outdoor fabric just arrived. So that's usually when I, head on down. It's usually on rolls, on these big industrial rolls. And I'm just checking it out. Like, do I like this color? Do I like this feel? Does it feel waterproof? That kind of a thing. And you can get really experimental. In fact, I have a bag right here that I made. This is a roll top bag, but this floral is just it's like upholstery fabric. And I just thought it would look really cute in a bag, which it does. So I definitely recommend Martin's if you have not gone into that yet. And I've also bought like giant things of webbing. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but it seemed really handy, and it really has turned into a very handy thing to have. Ragged Mountain Equipment. So in Intervale, right just north of North Conway in New Hampshire, is this great store. And it is one of the, I mean, maybe the only, and I'd love for someone to tell me differently, like dedicated outdoor fabric, like sewing center. It's a little forgotten, but if you go down to the basement, you can find fabric and zippers, P-cord, and just, again, there's not a ton of variety just because it's a bit smaller, but it's really great to be able to go in person and see what this looks like. Like, what does 1.5-inch webbing look like, or whatever, just like thickness of different fabrics. So if you're ever in the area, highly recommend it. So if you're in Seattle, I used to live in Portland, Oregon, and whenever I would go up to Seattle Fabrics, I loved it so much. We're talking like, this is a place that has the online presence, but the store is so great, and I got so many fun things from there. In fact, I'm going to grab another bag. This is a half frame bag that I made, and this Velcro, I think they called it like neon red. I don't know what it is, but it was on discount. I bought a ton of it because I loved the color so much. As you can tell, I'm super color motivated, which again is one of the reasons why I like to make my own gear. Because if you go to a store, you can't necessarily get exactly what you're looking for. So it's just like really fun to make bright colored things. And then of course, it's not listed here, but Like I live in Portland, there's a Joann Fabric. So if I ever need needles or thread, like essential things, I don't get a ton of fabric from there. Sometimes I get my ripstop nylon from there, but it's great for like the little like sewing machine supplies. And you know, they're all over. Although I just saw online that maybe they're going bankrupt. I don't know. I went in yesterday hoping for some mega sales. That hasn't happened yet. So we'll stay tuned on that. Oh yeah, and the last thing I just kind of wanted to say before I turn it over to Alejandro is another great thing you can do is when other pieces of your outdoor gear start to become expired, you can cut pieces off and use those like buckles. I have here some straps that I cut off a backpack with hopes of making another backpack, but being able to use these straps. And you can make your own straps as well. It's foam, it's fabric, there's webbing and buckles. But I just thought it'd be like really fun and handy just to try to use these ones. So, you know, before you get rid of a piece of gear, first of all, you know, figure out if you can repair it. And if you can't, see what you can salvage off it. Cause it's, like I said, it's really fun to put them in new pieces and then you can, you know, give memories along the way as well. So that is my presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Alejandro to talk about stuff, and then we'll do more questions later.
Yeah, so I think so. My journey into making my own gear, like it started growing up. My dad is a wooden boat builder. My mom's an artist and sewed a lot. So I spent time sort of dabbling in this idea that you could make things. I didn't include any pictures of the really ugly fiberglass boats. We have to like build a level of trust before I can show you that ugliness. But ugly is a theme that will continue throughout most of my projects. Unlike Travis, my skill is a little lower. And so I see myself as a great example of that you can have fun, you can make really cool gear without being the like best, most crafty person that there's ever been. And also it's a reminder that like a lot of the sewing we see from small makers is just it's a level above what make your own gear is about. In part because they're getting to use machines that we probably won't have access to. So you'll see a lot of frame bag manufacturers. They love showing videos of them taping the seams, sewing on a piece of webbing. If you don't have the right equipment, you can still do it, but it's just not going to look that same 100% perfect every time. But it's still you can still make great bags that work well. Next slide, please. So this was my first sort of bike-related sewing project. I had gotten a new bike and it had this cool ability that you could mount a frame bag without any strapping. And so I went about figuring out what would be, like, how would I make a frame bag for this? And so what I did is I just set the bike up on a table. I got some cardboard out and I just started carving up cardboard to make that shape. And I decided that I would use a piece of, wide, stiff webbing with some aluminum bars. That would be the frame, that sort of how I connected it to the frame, and sewed together this yellow bag here. You'll notice it's hard to notice, but there's no zippers. There's just two loose clips there. And then I can stuff anything I want in or out of that bag. This was a pretty quick project. It was simple, and it's still the bag that's on that bike. And it's one of my favorite full frame bags I've ever had. It's really easy to get stuff in and out of it. And that one, the seams I used, everything I used was sort of the lowest tech. So if you look in that bag, there's some fraying. I learned a lot of lessons there. But it's still a super useful bag, and I really can't find anyone else making a bag like it. So it gave me sort of what I wanted, and it really I don't remember the cost, but that was one of the ones that was actually lower than buying new, which isn't always the case with make your own gear. Next one. So I'm still making ugly things, but they're really, you know, what I like to do is start with my need and then design a bag up that will work for that. So the bag on the top left, I call it the mustard and ketchup bag. And that's a bag that I can use on the back of my seat. I can use it on my handlebars. It's just a really sort of simple, easy bag to carry a number of stuff in. The reflector pizzas, that was me sort of starting to work with heat seal fabrics. And so those are actually have a little pocket, two pieces of stick on Velcro so that they can go over a belt and a reflective tab. So that was just sort of messing around, making something really simple that worked well. And, you know, I could put my wallet in there. I had a little bit of extra reflection as I biked around. And then the three pictures there are showing a bag I made to carry my tent. And I could put this a number of different places on my bike. But it was just a quick roll with some straps on it. And it was also, you can see I put the webbing sort of around the edge. This is me practicing sewing webbing on. So just a chance to kind of learn a new skill and make a really weird specific thing that 100% I don't know anybody making something like that. There's probably reasons for that, but it works for me. Next slide. So this is a project that I'm really excited about. I actually just used this today. As somebody who is biking to go paddling and paddling whitewater, I was tired of how bulky throw bags were. So I wanted to come up with a way that I could carry the throw bag on my side. And I first just, you know, held a throw bag I already owned. I strapped it on there, went paddling with it, and it didn't get in the way. So I made an outer bag that you see on the left side. And then that's kind of a holster that the throw bag goes into. And this was a pretty simple project, straight, you know, straight cuts, easy seams, but it's given me something that a piece of gear that I may be the only person in the world that wants one of these, but it's, you know, perfect for my needs. And I don't know of anybody making custom throw bags, so there really wasn't an option for me to go elsewhere. I talked to a number of people that, you know, make other bags, and once I said the word throw bag, they got kind of nervous about it. So it allowed me to make sort of my own thing. The fabric you see there is a Cordura, so it's a heavier, super durable fabric. But by making a pretty simple design, I ended up with a really light bag, lighter than most of the ones available. Not lighter than the Hyperlight one, but it also was a little bit cheaper than that. Next slide. So this is, you know, we all use rubber plastic straps if we're biking after a certain point. A lot of us use Bolle straps. There's a number of other manufacturers. The sun starts to eat those away after a couple of years, and they're also not the lightest, and they're pretty bulky. So I had this idea of, could I make a webbing adjustable strap that would work well? And I found this guy, Brodegam Wilderness Equipment, and he's making metal parts. So this is a titanium G hook, and he's in Minnesota, so he's really focused on winter camping and things you can use with gloves on. So the small piece of string is so you can adjust the buckle with like a pair of mittens on. So this was, you know, a simple strap I made. Um, and I don't have a bar tack machine. So you see the white stitching on the webbing. Um, if you have a bar tack machine, those are really easy to do. But on my sewing machine, there's a button feature. So I just use the button feature to make sort of a simulated bar tack. And they are strong. I'm not saying that this would be, you know, a critical safety gear, but I think I would struggle to break those tacks. So, you know, this was a simple project, but I now have a set of straps to a length that I'm, you know, they work well for me. All right, next one. This has been one of my, yeah, the Lex, the mitten feature is real. Like I messed around with them, and they're super easy to get loose, and also they don't budge. He makes really amazing stuff. And if anybody likes sporks, he's got really nice sporks. It's cool stuff. And you know, with make your own gear, you can support. There's some cool makers that you can support with this. So this is a dryish bag. I don't claim a full dry bag status for it. But this is one of my first successful projects using Dyneema, which is a super lightweight fabric. A lot of ultralight backpacks are made out of it. And one of the cool things about Dyneema is it's a waterproof fabric, and it's also, there's an adhesive tape you can buy so that you can seal your seams and so that they do not leak. So this was a pattern I found on Ripstop by the Roll. And they sell a kit for it, but in watching some YouTube videos they had, I figured out the lengths and bought my own fabric for it. And I wanted to try not using a plastic buckle. So you can see on the picture on the right of the top, just a little metal tab I found, and using a small piece of cord was able to make sort of a hook and loop that holds the bag closed. So I forget the weight of this, but it's a super lightweight bag. It's durable. I've filled it with water and not had any leak out of it. So, you know, this should be considered a dry bag. And it works well on the forks of my bike. I put them inside of other bags. They're just really sort of a useful size, whether I'm backpacking, bike packing, boating. And so just super happy with how these turned out. And was a really fun way to start working in Dyneema. And Dyneema is an expensive fabric, but it is light, it's durable, and it's actually fair. I find it sort of one of the easier fabrics to work with. I would say Cordura and Dyneema are two of the sort of the ones that I find the most workable. So it's an investment to buy this, but I think if you have a good plan, you really can end up with something you're happy with. You're not going to beat the prices, but you won't end up spending a lot more money, and you can make it sort of specialized to the way you want. All right, and now we can see some of these in action in the next slide. So this is my most recent project. So we have the dry bags from before, and then I had this really weird idea for a frame bag that was not actually a bag. I like to call it a hammock. So it's got an opening in the bottom, and it's on both sides, and there's two straps that go over the bar. And they can hold a water bottle, they can hold two dry bags. The gray dry bag there has a triangle bottom, so it sort of stuffs in and follows the frame shape. And this bag has just been super easy to get stuff in and out of. I really like the way that it works. And we have some fun buckles from Austere Manufacturing. And some things to notice about it. If you look at the gray dry bag closely, the seam is pulling on it. So I had to re-sew that one. And the other thing you'll notice is the blue tape that's holding the webbing together. I'm still picking that off. When I'm working with webbing, I really like to sort of tape it in position before sewing it. And I find that sort of, you have a little bit of work to do afterwards, but it just helps you get good, clean lines. And you can again see those button feature tacks. But this was a super, just kind of simple design. It's one piece of fabric that meets against the seat post tube. And yeah, and on to the next one. So these are sort of the steps that I like to follow when I'm designing something new. So working with my own pattern. I like to remind myself that I'm making a prototype, and that sort of gets rid of any perfectionist thoughts I had in my head. And I really try and like find one like use that I'm working for it. What Travis was saying about reusing parts of your old gear, the other thing I really like to do is take apart my old gear at the seams and see how it was made. I learned a lot from taking apart MRS stove bags. Those simple little stuff sacks have a really amazing way that they're sewn together that gives you this flat base. So if you're looking to make like some dry bags or stuff sacks to, for fork mounts, look at like an old MRS Whisper Light stuff sack. They have a cool like cross pattern that they've sewn together that's like I would have never thought of it. Now I've copied it a few times and it works really well. Remember to add a little bit of extra material for your seams. And then cardboard, paper, plastic, less expensive fabric, all these things work really well to make patterns for. And then you can trace them onto your nice fabric and cut it up before you cut. And whenever I use a new fabric, I just take a little scrap of it and try sewing with it. You'll learn how the fabric works with your machine. Some fabrics slide, some bunch up, and it can be costly if you're using a really big piece and you're learning for the first time how it's going to react. And then the thing that I say to do, but I never do, is think through all the steps before you start sewing. It's easier to add those, loops and other little pieces on when you haven't sewn your sort of bag together. It's a lot easier to work on flat pieces, but learn from my mistake and think through your steps a little better before you go. All right, next one. So I'm not going to try to explain these seams, but if you start to work, some of these I had no idea that they even existed, and someone was like, why don't you try a French seam? And then I went and learned how to do it, and it was an invaluable lesson. So we mostly work with a plain seam, which is just two pieces of fabric. We sew it together and then we pull it away. A French seam is we take a plain seam, we fold it one more time and sew a second time. The great thing about a French seam is any exposed edge of your fabric is tucked away. So it's going to reduce the chances of it fraying. It's also more waterproof or water resistant than a plain seam. And in addition to that, it's a stronger seam. One of the issues with it is it gets pretty stiff if you're using thicker fabrics. but often with bags, that's a nice feature. Uh, and then the next type of seam is a tape seam. So this can be done with bias tape or webbing. And you're just doing a plain seam and then you're coming back, folding a piece of fabric over it and sewing that on. This is what is, the majority of sort of professionally made backpacks and bike bags are going to use this kind of tape seam. It's a little bit stronger, a little bit drier, and it will last longer because the fabric won't fray. And then finally, we have a flat tape seam, which is using an adhesive tape over the seam. This is what I did with the Dyneema dry bag. And you need a fabric that can work with tape, and you also need it's an additional expense to buy the tape for it. There are many others. If you look at your jeans or pants you're wearing, there's probably at least 4 types of stitching happening on that. It's kind of cool to just look and see why they use one type of stitching on your inseam and a different type on the outseam. But that's way beyond my knowledge. But cool things to learn about. All right, next one. And my next goal is to start working on zippers. You may have noticed that there were no zippers in any of my projects. I have tried 1 or 2. They were, yeah, I need someone really smart and a good educator to teach me. So I'm hoping Travis and I can work on that.
Yes, and then I've never actually done a French seam, so you can help me with that.
Yeah, they're fun.
Wait, are we unmuted over here? So should we open it up for thank you so much, Alejandro. That was awesome. And I've never worked with some of those fabrics, and I've been eyeing them like from Stop by the Roll. So now I feel more inspired to try them out.
Nice.
Yeah, let's go to any questions.
There's a good comment from Kristen that local recommendation for thrifty folks sourcing materials, Goodwill by the pound in Gorham. She said, great luck harvesting fabric, straps, zippers, and hardware from clothes, tents, and bags.
Ooh, I did not even know about that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that tip. Looks like somebody else likes Rugged Mountain as well. Yeah, great resource there. Plus, they also make their own gear and stuff, and it's really cool stuff.
I have a quick comment, and that's regarding sewing machines. I just use a regular sewing machine to mess around and do the same sort of stuff. And I found that when I first started doing that, I was bending or breaking a lot of needles because sewing machines kind of get delivered for like lightweight t-shirts and that kind of lightweight cloth. But you can get heavy duty needles for any sewing machine, and that really helped reduce the frustration with breaking those needles and getting through like layers of fabric, especially webbing. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yeah, it is so true. And yeah, when I first started, I had no idea. And if you haven't replaced a needle in your sewing machine, it's actually usually pretty simple. It's you usually just like a little screw, you just throw it right back up in there. And like the ones from Joann's, I get ones that either say like leather or jean. It's like something really heavy duty, and it's really easy to replace. And it's always good to replace it before you start a new project because they do get dulled pretty quickly.
Avi asked, any YouTube channels you recommend showing different methods?
Sailrite makes amazing, like informative videos, and like it's great because the video is about a stitch. It's not like here's a big project. So I find myself going there a lot. And then the other thing is like even if what you're trying to make is like an outdoor gear bag, there are so many great sewing videos that are not outdoor gear related. So go down those other rabbit holes too. Like don't stick just to like outdoor makers. But Sailrite has an amazing library of like, here's how to do this stitch, here's what it's good for, here's its challenges. And they show, you know, a variety of each one. So yeah, they're great.
And we'll be sending a follow-up email to everybody that has some of these links and recommendations. So we'll get that information to you. Anne asked, what kind of fabric works with seam tape?
So there's a couple types of seam tape that are sticky. There's some iron-on ones that will work with most fabrics that you can iron. So there's a few like really lightweight like polyesters that you can melt really easily, so you have to be careful with. And then the sort of the adhesive seam tape is going to need something with a really smooth finish. Like, so there's a number of fabrics that have a mylar finish. So this would be your Dynemas, any of your composite fabrics, and like your challenge sailcloth. A lot of the ones that are coming out of sailing, they work really well with the mylar tape. And this is somewhere where Ripstop by the Roll does a really good job of fabric descriptions, telling you whether it's tapeable or not. So even if you don't buy from them, it's worth spending some time like on their site learning about the fabric.
And there's another product you can use too, because I've never actually used the tape and it sounds much easier than what I've used in the past. But and you can just get this at Joann's, but it's like seam sealer and it's more like a liquid or a gel, and you kind of like paint it on, and then usually every time I open a tube, it then dries out. But so it's it's a little frustrating to work with, but that one you can, you know, if you are local to a Joann's, you can usually find a liquid, and sometimes even at like an outdoor store, because it's for like resealing like your tent seams if your tent is starting to like lose some of its waterproofing and stuff.
Cool. Christopher wrote a note, bikepacking.com has some great sewing guides, and a material that they've worked with is old banners. Usually the material is reinforced, waterproof, and quite durable. People will give it away. I know I've definitely seen bags made out of like billboard signs and things like that.
Yeah, great suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah, and Christopher's made some great gear. One thing to go back to seam tape, if anybody doesn't have a sewing machine, you can make Dyneema bags with tape alone. So they make a double-sided tape and a single-sided tape. So you basically are like, it's like back to elementary school paper craft, and you can make yourself a waterproof, lightweight, durable bag. And 3M, which makes most of that tape, claims that the tape has like shear, so you can pull like one piece of fabric directly away from the other that is stronger than the fabric, which is on a very strong fabric. It does tend to peel back, but you can do some great stuff with that without even having a sewing machine.
Eric threw in some good project ideas from recceworks.com.
Right.
And Henry also noted you can top stitch a French seam, basically adding a third line of stitching to add strength or a finished look. Got a lot of great crafty people here.
Cool, I love it.
Yeah. We should add a make your own gear session at the Rambler.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
and actually, speaking of which, so I'm starting next week, I'm actually teaching a frame bag workshop. This session is full, but I'm hoping to offer more. So if this is something you're interested in, you're in the Portland area and you have a sewing machine, all the supplies everything's included with the price of the registration. So anyways, we'll keep you updated with any additional dates if you'd like to try your hand at a frame bag.
Cool.
And if there's no other questions, any other questions out there before I just say no other questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for everyone. Thank you, Alejandro, for calling in today. I just want to let people know that yes, this is recorded. This will be on our Wednesday webinar website next week or in a few days. You can watch the video again or use audio. And next Wednesday, is it next Wednesday?
Next
Next
Wednesday.
Wednesday, we have Paige Emerson
Mhm.
from Chubby Hiker Reviews. We're very excited to have her. So thank you again so much, and thanks to Tandem for sponsoring this, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.